Hello folks, I am Rob here once more to play the role of role-play game historian and present you with a short snippet out of the book from Star Wars the Role-Playing Game, 1st edition West End Games. And this, just like most other role-playing games, has a section in there where they explain what gameplay might feel like, might sound like, with all the different participants taking turns to, even if they just interject some dialogue, make it feel like the movies, where everybody in the scene is important, even if they don't have anything technically to do. You can count on C-3PO spouting up and giving some sort of figure that frames the situation, or somebody will say, almost everybody will say something at some point. This is important in various scenes because silent protagonists rarely do well in action, character-driven stories. So, Star Wars is certainly no exception to that, and if you're playing in a Star Wars game and your character never gets to say or do anything, it's going to feel pretty strange. As a result, this is an example kind of what you're shooting for in bringing everybody to the game table at this point. Also, it shows off some of the mechanics of the game, which can be useful, but not a lot. This is based on a situation, very quick, fast-hitting. This would not take a great deal of time in-game, just a few minutes, but it does show off many of the mechanics that are important to the game. So, we shall begin. The background. Greg is the game master, seated at the head of the table. Erwin is playing Roark Garnet, a smuggler. Paul is playing Jill Farseeker, a kid, and Roark's long-lost daughter. Her grandfather, retired Imperial Captain Jackson Farseeker, is played by Janet, so all in the family. The bounty hunter is Tantos Dree, played by Bill. The players have just left the planet Thorgeld. Also interesting, you've got one person who is playing a male character playing a girl. So it's, going into, hey, it's fine to play the character that you want, the gender. It didn't matter back then as much. Also, there is a female player, Jill. So, again, this kind of thing has been presented since relatively early days. That, this isn't just a game for males of a certain age, and it's okay to play different genders and try different types of character. So I always think that's interesting, that they have that kind of inclusiveness even in a game that, what's the copyright on this? Back a ways. So 1987 is this first printing. And I loved this book because it had such evocative pictures and things. I'm going to have to do a review on this, as I well should. But in this case, let's just get to the story, shall we? So, Greg is the GM. There's an Imperial Customs frigate on your screens, a light on your commo board, says someone's calling. Erwin as Roark. Uh-oh. I answer. Again, Greg. INS Assessor, calling Stocklight Freighter. Identify yourself, please. Erwin as Roark. Assessor, this is the freighter Dorian Discus. Again, Greg. Stand by, Dorian Discus. Prepare for customs inspection. Erwin again. Oops. Roger, Assessor. Janet, as Imperial Captain Jackson. Could be trouble, young Garnet. Tantos, as played by Bill. Hey, listen, buddy. If the impies find me on board, I'm wampa meat. On second thought, if they find me, you're wampa meat. Catch my drift? Erwin. Great. How soon can we make the jump to hyperspace? Greg, who's doing the astrogation? Janet again. Humph. I shall. Greg, it'll take you a few minutes to calculate the data. Do you want to rush it, or are you being careful? Janet again. I'll follow established procedures. Greg, okay. Roark, they're calling again. Dorian Discus, in the name of the Emperor, cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Paul, played by Jill. Hey, I got an idea. Let's hide Tantos, okay? I bet we could string him out an airlock at the end of the rope and they'd never find him. Bill as Tantos. Gah, kids. I'm not being strung up like a yo-yo, you hear? Greg, I'm heading down to the gunnery bay. Erwin as Roark. Keep your armor on, bounty hunter. I'll take care of this. Assessor, this is Dorian Discus. Negative on customs inspection. We have a priority cargo for the Imperial base on Marcon 4. Your priority authorization is filed on Thargeld. From Greg. Care to make a con roll for that one? Erwin as Roark. Okay, my con is 3D. He rolls 3 six-sided dice. A 9. Again, Greg. Sorry, Roark. A blast from a laser cannon whizzes past your bow. Dorian Discus. Cut engines immediately. This is your final warning. Erwin again. Where's that astrogation data? From Janet, as retired Admiral Jackson. Patience, lad. I'm working on it. Greg, I'm hurrying. Greg. Okay, next round you'll make your astrogation roll. Roark. Assessor will almost certainly fire next round. Doing anything about it? From Bill as Tantos. Well, if he won't, I will. I said I was going to the gunnery bay, remember? I'm taking a shot at the impies. From Erwin as Roark. Oh, great. You're going to shoot at a ship 10 times our size? Bill again. Hey, you got a better idea? Erwin. Well, surrender's a perfectly honorable. And then Paul as Jill. Come on, Dad, let's fight him, huh? Roark again. Well, you're all intent on suicide. How about a little fancy piloting to dodge the next shot? From Greg as the GM. Okay, Jackson, roll your astrogation skill to get the data. A 14? Oops, sorry. Tantos, roll your gunnery. There it is, under mechanical. You've got 2D plus 2, and a Stocklade Freighter's fire control is 2D, so roll 4D plus 2. It's medium range, and the frigate isn't dodging, so you need a 15. Jeez, look at all those 1s and 2s. Not having a good time today, are you? Roark, the frigate fires again. What's your piloting skill? 5D plus 2. I roll a 20. Okay, that increases their difficulty number. Rolls the dice. Another cannon bolt whizzes past you as you spiral out of the way. Good piloting, Captain. What next? From Bill, I shoot again. Erwin, more of the same all around, I guess. Greg, Jackson, good. A 19. You got the data. Next round, and you're free. Bill, not good enough. And Erwin, good. He rolls for the Imperial Fire again. Aha! They hit you, but... He rolls again. Your shields hold. Another hit, and you're in big trouble, though. Erwin. Okay. Oi, initiate hyperspace. From Greg as GM. A million lights turn into radiating lines in your way. From Janet as Jackson. Whew. From Paul as Jill. Neat. Bill as Tantos. Guess we're safe then. Greg as the GM. Perhaps. There's an ominous clicking sound coming from the upper hull, and the power seems to be fluctuating slightly. Maybe the shields didn't block that last shot completely. So, really quick sum up. Things are done by rolling rolling six-sided dice, depending on how skilled you are. So you can get the basic mechanics of the game from that. You total them all up, and if you hit a certain threshold, you succeed. If you don't, you fail. But you're generally free to keep trying and trying and trying. That is how combat works, and if you are dodging, you can make a roll to completely try to get out of the way. It's a fairly simple system that is repeated again and again throughout the D6 system. It's only when you start getting into things like the Force that it gets any more complicated, really, than that. But here's the thing. You've got a variety of people in that kind of a situation. And for some of them, normally, maybe players might throw up their hands and say, I'm just playing a kid, I can't do anything. No, the kid can say something, they can change a decision, they can alter or flavor a scene. Characters shouldn't be silent very often if they are to be significant characters for a story. And even a kid, somebody who normally is overlooked by just about everyone, can sometimes say and do the most important thing in a scene. Also, a character who stays true to their character throughout is a lot easier to get into character with. So the character of a bounty hunter who is stuck on a ship where his blaster skills aren't going to help him at all, and he doesn't have a quarry to track at the moment, will attempt to live by his means, meaning he goes off to go into the guns when there's a clear fight possibly showing up. Despite the fact he may not be very good with guns, and clearly at 2D plus 2 in skill he's not great, but that's being true to the character. The retired Imperial captain, well, he's helping. He's not taking a central action role, but he's doing the important things that need to get done. An astrogation test, for instance, to get them out of harm's way, is very much in the role of an advisor character. Now, if they had had the scenario take place over combat, then sure, he probably would have looked for cover and probably fired. He's probably pretty decent with a blaster. Roark also, as a smuggler, is probably pretty decent, and you pretty much know that Tantos is going to be quite good with blasters. But in a situation like that, perhaps the kid is left out. I remember default to the kid's template, they get something like a rock and a sling. That's about it. And some sort of little pet that fits in their pocket. Something furry and cute. So yeah, in a blaster fight, the kid doesn't have as much to do. But in this kind of a scenario, it encourages everybody to take a part in all of the scenes, even if it doesn't seem like they really would have much to do. A kid can still use youthful enthusiasm and exuberance to drive the story, maintain interest in their character, certainly. And for something like this, that does have narration and ebb and flow, very little of what I just read involves dice rolling. There were a couple of things to resolve situations, certainly, but almost everything you heard was driven by the characters themselves. First of all, of course, primarily Roark. It's his ship, and he's in the cockpit at the comm. So him being able to try to con their way past the customs frigate was on him, and he made the initial important roll that set up the rest of the encounter. Sure. But then as the encounter shaped up, everybody participates. Even if it's not rolling a die. And I can tell you this much. Even if Tantos had hit that frigate, quite honestly, starship scale guns going up to a big capital ship as a frigate is, they wouldn't have had much chance to do anything to that ship. When they say it's literally 10 times the size, that means the shields are bigger too, and the hull plates are that much thicker. So yeah, the guns on a frigate are generally not all that on a space transporter, not all that impressive, until you get a really decked out one like the Millennium Falcon. That's of course got top of the line stuff. And it's jury rigged to heck and back. So, something to shoot for. In this early example, the characters are not sitting on, things of the level of the Millennium Falcon. The Dorian Discus is actually probably pretty close to a stock freighter. So it's not very fast, its guns are very weak, and it's large, bulky, has pretty good shields, and is just there for hauling a lot of stuff. However, it often will get pressed into other services for the Republic, and before that, the Rebellion. Certainly of this age was the Rebellion. And, yeah, all in all, that was a very brief snippet of an action scene, which could have gone either way, certainly. The ship could have been disabled, although it's unlikely that Greg probably would have destroyed them from a simple customs frigate. I would imagine customs frigate probably have ion cannons. They probably would have switched to that at some point when the shields were down to disable the ship, so they could have boarded it. And then the situation might have gotten really interesting. But as far as the scenario goes, it seems pretty fair. Greg gave them a situation, let them roll dice to try to resolve things, but they had to come up with those solutions on their own. And he suggested solutions when it was patently obvious. If you want to go to hyperspace, you need somebody to come up with astrogation. So Greg asked who was going to do that obvious task that needed done, and that left Jackson to step forward and offer to do it. Perhaps it wasn't his best skill. Maybe as an Imperial captain, he might have been the person who would have been most ideal to talk to the Imperial customs agents and try to talk them down. Because it's unlikely that unless traffic is really slow, a customs frigate is going to board every single ship that they see. And he might have known some ways of getting around it. But that wasn't his job. It's not his ship. And that is definitely something that would have been more Roark's thing. Even if Roark wasn't the best at conning, and 3 dice isn't terrible for that. So, yeah, it's a nice little snippet of gameplay, and the nice thing about this, too, is that all of this stuff would have been resolved in as little as a few minutes. About as long as it took me to read it, really. Perhaps a little bit longer to calculate out the result of dice rolls, but pretty fast. This game was fairly straightforward until you started to get into pitched battles. When you're taking on 12 stormtroopers, for instance, it can slow down quite a bit. If you're having the fight against the big bad evil guy and his goons, the fight can take a while. Sure, just like almost any other game, combat can slow things down quite a bit. But, and there's the but to it, it's the bulk of the game that is most important. Combat may not be the most important thing in a game of Star Wars, and quite frequently isn't. It's pretty dangerous stuff. Blaster bolts flying here and there, and all it takes is a bad soak roll, and your character could be incapacitated like that. It can be pretty rough. You can spend character points to try to soften blows and keep yourself alive, but if the dice turn against you, a fight can be resolved fairly quickly, and not in a good way for you. So, a lot of times you will spend making decisions and maybe rolling non-combat procedures so that you can, try to overcome things without having to pull your blaster all the time. So, a pretty good example of that in this little snippet. So, hopefully you've enjoyed that. I think we'll keep looking around through some of the Star Wars D6 role-playing game and try to find you some examples of gameplay that might get you interested in this, admittedly, a little bit of an older relic, but still a fine one. And until that time, thank you for joining me for another episode of Worlds Their Way. Thank you and farewell.